If you want to predict whether someone will develop colon cancer, the second deadliest cancer in the world, don't start with their genetics or their family history. Start with what is living inside their intestines right now. Because here is what most people don't know. Colon cancer doesn't appear randomly. In the decade before a tumor ever forms, a specific war happens inside your gut, and the wrong bacteria win. What if a single spice you already have in your kitchen could enter that battlefield, wipe out the harmful bacteria fueling tumor growth, and then cut off a cancer cell's food supply entirely before it ever becomes a problem? Today, I'm going to show you exactly how that works, and the science behind it is far more compelling than anything you'll hear at a routine checkup. Think of your large intestine like a long, crowded subway system. Trillions of microorganisms live on every surface. Most of them are commuters. They mind their business, do their jobs, keep things moving. But a growing number of troublemakers have started boarding at every stop. These harmful bacteria, species like Fusobacterium nucleatum, Bacteroides fragilis, and opportunistic E. coli strains, don't just sit quietly. They excrete toxins directly into the intestinal lining. They trigger a state of continuous, low-grade inflammation that never fully turns off. And here's the terrifying part. That chronic inflammation is now linked in peer-reviewed literature to the initiation and acceleration of colorectal cancer. But it gets worse. These same bacteria actively reprogram the environment around early cancer cells, signaling to the body not to attack them. They essentially bribe your immune system into silence. The good news? Your gut is not a fixed battlefield. The balance of power in there shifts based on what you eat, sometimes within 24 to 48 hours. And one specific spice shifts it dramatically in your favor. Hi, I'm Dr. Leana. I've spent nearly 10 years in emergency medicine and cancer research. And I want to be honest with you about something. For a long time, I counseled patients using the conventional framework. Colonoscopies on schedule, watch your red meat intake, know your family history. That advice isn't wrong, but it is incomplete. Because over the past decade, the science on the gut microbiome and cancer initiation has moved so quickly that it's completely reshaped how I think about prevention. The question I kept coming back to: why does someone with no family history, no obvious risk factors, end up with colorectal cancer at 52? That question now has a much more detailed answer than it did when I started. And a big part of that answer lives in the bacteria we're either feeding or starving with every single meal. So in this video, I want to cover 5 specific things with you. First, which bacterial species are most directly implicated in colorectal cancer development, and what signs in your own history might suggest your microbiome is already skewed in that direction. Second, the precise mechanism by which one spice compound eliminates those harmful bacteria selectively without collateral damage to your beneficial strains. Third, a completely separate pathway through which the same compound interferes with cancer cell survival, specifically by cutting off a tumor's ability to build its own blood supply. Fourth, and this is the one most people miss, why the majority of people using this spice get functionally zero benefit from it, and the one change to how you prepare it that makes all the difference. And fifth, a specific meal-by-meal protocol you can begin today that gets this compound into your system at the doses where the research actually demonstrates results. One quick thing before we get into the science. I hear regularly from people who've watched a number of my videos and only realize much later that they never hit subscribe. If that might be you, would you check right now? Takes about 2 seconds, it's completely free, and it means this channel can keep reaching people who are genuinely looking for health information grounded in real research. I appreciate it. The compound I'm talking about is curcumin, and the food source is turmeric. I want to pause there for a second because I know what just happened. A lot of people heard turmeric and their brain moved on. Oh, I've heard of that. Maybe I have some in the cabinet. Maybe I drink golden milk sometimes. And I understand that reaction. Turmeric has been in every wellness article for the past 10 years, and overexposure breeds dismissal. But here's what those wellness articles almost never tell you. The biologically active compound in turmeric, curcumin, has been the subject of over 15,000 peer-reviewed studies. It isn't a supplement trend. It is one of the most rigorously studied natural compounds in modern pharmacology. And the research on its specific actions in the gut and against colorectal cancer tissue is genuinely striking. The problem isn't that people don't know about turmeric. The problem is that the way virtually everyone uses it, a pinch in a smoothie, a capsule off a pharmacy shelf, delivers almost none of the curcumin to the places in the body where it needs to go. I'll explain why in a few minutes, because fixing that one thing changes everything about whether this actually works for you. What we're looking at here is a dual-action biological weapon inside your spice cabinet, but only if you know how to actually use it. Here's where it gets interesting. Your gut is home to roughly 100 trillion microorganisms. Most antimicrobial compounds, including pharmaceutical antibiotics, are blunt instruments. They walk into that subway system and clear the entire platform. Good bacteria, bad bacteria, doesn't matter. Curcumin does something different. Think of it like a trained security officer who has memorized the faces of every known troublemaker. It moves through the intestinal environment and targets harmful bacterial strains specifically, disrupting their cell membrane integrity, inhibiting their ability to form the protective biofilms they hide behind, and suppressing the signaling proteins they use to communicate and coordinate. Fusobacterium nucleatum, one of the bacteria most consistently found in colorectal tumor tissue, is particularly vulnerable. Research has shown curcumin disrupts its adhesion mechanism, which is essentially how it latches onto the intestinal wall in the first place. No attachment, no colonization. But here's what makes this extraordinary. Curcumin simultaneously feeds the beneficial bacteria. It acts as a prebiotic, increasing populations of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, two strains associated with healthy immune function and reduced inflammation. It's not just eliminating the enemy, it's reinforcing the defense. This selective action is something that pharmaceutical researchers have spent billions trying to replicate. And it's sitting in most people's spice racks. Now here's what most people who know about turmeric never hear. Even after curcumin has done its work in the bacterial environment, it continues operating at the cellular level against cancer cells that may already be forming. To understand how, you need to know one thing about how cancer survives and grows. A tumor cannot expand beyond the size of a small pinhead without growing its own blood vessel network. It sends out chemical signals, specifically a protein called vegf, vascular endothelial growth factor, that tells surrounding tissue to build it new blood vessels. Once those vessels arrive, the tumor's food supply is unlimited. Growth accelerates by thousands of % within weeks. Curcumin is one of the most potent natural vegf inhibitors identified in human research. It blocks the signal. The blood vessels don't form. The tumor sits there, starving, unable to expand. But that's only part of what it does. Curcumin also activates a process called apoptosis, programmed cell death. Every normal cell in your body has a built-in self-destruct sequence for when it becomes damaged or dysfunctional. Cancer cells have learned to disable that switch. Curcumin goes in and turns it back on. In laboratory models of colorectal cancer, curcumin has been shown to induce apoptosis in cancer cells while leaving healthy cells completely undisturbed. This isn't theoretical biology. This has been observed and measured in human tissue samples, cell cultures, and animal models across dozens of independent research institutions. Let me give you the specifics, because specifics are what this kind of conversation requires. A clinical trial at the University of Illinois enrolled 44 adults with elevated colorectal cancer risk, people who had already had adenomatous polyps removed and were statistically more likely to develop additional ones. Participants received 4 grams of curcumin daily for 30 days. At the trial's end, colon tissue biopsies were analyzed for aberrant crypt foci, the precancerous cellular formations that precede polyp development. The reduction in these formations was statistically significant and directly measurable in tissue samples. Not a symptom score, not a questionnaire, actual biopsy data. A separate trial, conducted at Johns Hopkins, focused specifically on patients with familial adenomatous polyposis, a genetic condition that causes the colon to develop dozens to hundreds of precancerous polyps over time. Participants received curcumin combined with a bioavailability enhancing compound. After 6 months, polyp count dropped by approximately 60% and polyp size reduced by just over 50%. For context, this is a condition where the standard medical recommendation is prophylactic surgical removal of the colon. A 60% polyp reduction without surgery through a dietary compound drew serious attention from the research community. A microbiome-focused analysis published in the journal Gut Microbes examined fecal microbial composition in 200 adults before and after 8 weeks of curcumin supplementation. Researchers used metagenomic sequencing, the same technique used in major human microbiome projects, to map bacterial populations at a species level. The results showed statistically significant decreases in inflammatory gram-negative bacterial species and corresponding increases in Bifidobacterium longum, a species that has independently been associated with reduced colorectal cancer incidence in large population studies. Finally, laboratory research conducted at MD Anderson Cancer Center, one of the world's leading cancer research institutions, tested curcumin's effect on colorectal cancer cell lines. The focus was NF-kappa B, a master regulatory protein that cancer cells hijack to prevent their own immune-mediated destruction. Curcumin suppressed NF-kappa B signaling by up to 80% in treated samples. The cancer cells effectively lost their ability to hide from immune attack. Across all 4 of these studies, different institutions, different methodologies, different endpoints, the direction of the findings is consistent. Now I want to address the single biggest reason why most people using turmeric see no measurable benefit. And it has nothing to do with the science being wrong. Curcumin, in its natural form, is extraordinarily poorly absorbed by the human digestive system. When you consume turmeric powder, even a generous amount, the majority of it passes through the small intestine and into the colon without ever entering your bloodstream at a meaningful concentration. Pharmacokinetic studies have placed standard curcumin bioavailability at less than 1%. Less than 1% of what you consume actually gets absorbed. Think about what that means practically. If the therapeutic doses in clinical trials are in the range of 1 to 4 grams of curcumin, and you're absorbing less than 1% of what you take in, your golden milk with a half teaspoon of turmeric is delivering perhaps 1 or 2 milligrams of active compound into your bloodstream. That is not a therapeutic dose. That's trace. There are 2 ways to solve this, and both of them are cheap and available in your kitchen. The first is black pepper. The active compound in black pepper, piperine, inhibits a specific intestinal enzyme called CYP3A4 that is responsible for metabolizing curcumin before it can be absorbed. When piperine is present alongside curcumin, that enzyme is temporarily suppressed. The curcumin that would have been broken down instead crosses the intestinal barrier intact. Multiple pharmacokinetic studies have documented the result. Absorption increases by approximately 2,000%. Not 20%. Not 200%. 2,000% from a pinch of black pepper. The second is dietary fat. Curcumin is fat-soluble. When consumed with fat, olive oil, avocado, the fat in eggs or fish, it binds to lipid molecules and enters your lymphatic system via a separate absorption route that bypasses the primary breakdown mechanisms entirely. Turmeric plus black pepper plus any fat source. That is the combination that makes this a real intervention rather than a symbolic one. Now, practically speaking, the goal is 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of quality turmeric spread across the day, always paired with black pepper and a fat source. Here's how to do that without restructuring your entire diet. Morning golden milk, 7 to 9 a.m. Warm 1 cup of unsweetened oat milk or almond milk to just below a simmer. Whisk in 1 teaspoon of turmeric, a firm pinch of freshly cracked black pepper, and half a teaspoon of coconut oil or a small pour of olive oil. Ginger and cinnamon are optional additions that complement the flavor. Avoid cow's milk here. Casein protein binds to curcumin and significantly inhibits absorption. This single morning drink, prepared correctly, delivers somewhere between 200 and 400 milligrams of curcumin in a form your body can actually use. Breakfast, eggs, or oatmeal. If you're making scrambled eggs, add half a teaspoon of turmeric and a crack of pepper directly into the eggs before they hit the pan. Cook in olive oil. The fat from both the eggs and the oil creates the absorption environment you need. If you prefer oatmeal, stir turmeric into the oats as they cook, add a tablespoon of almond butter for fat content, and finish with black pepper. The combination tastes warmer and more complex than plain oats. Most people find they actually prefer it. Lunch, soups, grain bowls, dressings. Turmeric dissolves cleanly into warm liquids. 1 teaspoon into lentil soup, any vegetable broth, or a grain bowl dressed in olive oil takes 10 seconds. For salads, a 2-minute dressing of 2 tablespoons olive oil, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, half a teaspoon turmeric, and a pinch of pepper works on anything. This is the easiest meal of the day to hit your midday dose. Dinner, roasted vegetables or seasoned protein. Before roasting any vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, sweet potato, carrots, chickpeas, toss them in olive oil, turmeric, black pepper, and sea salt. Roasting at standard oven temperatures does not meaningfully degrade curcumin. For any protein source, fish, chicken, lentils, rubbing turmeric and pepper directly onto the surface before cooking in olive oil or avocado oil adds flavor and therapeutic value in the same motion. Evening, optional second dose. A smaller golden milk in the evening extends curcumin's presence in the gut through the overnight hours. The lower intestinal tract is most metabolically active during sleep in terms of microbial activity. Getting curcumin into that environment in the evening means it's present when gut bacterial populations are at their most stable and most responsive to modulation. A few specifics worth knowing before you start, because the details here affect whether this works. The black pepper is non-negotiable. I want to say that plainly, because I know people will read this and think, I'll add it when I remember. Curcumin without piperine produces blood levels too low to have measurable biological effect. If you're going to take this seriously, the pepper goes in every time. Freshly cracked pepper has higher piperine content than pre-ground, not dramatically, but meaningfully if you're optimizing. Fat quantity matters less than fat presence. You don't need to add a large amount. A teaspoon of olive oil or the fat already in your eggs or fish is enough to engage the lipid-based absorption pathway. What cannot be absent is fat in some form. On heat, curcumin tolerates standard cooking temperatures well. Sautéing at medium heat, roasting at 350 to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, no problem. Extended high-temperature deep frying degrades it more substantially, but that's not a common preparation context for turmeric anyway. On sourcing, not all turmeric powder is equivalent. Curcumin content in bulk or low-grade turmeric can be as low as 1 to 2% of the powder's weight. Quality organic turmeric from a reputable source will typically carry a standardized curcumin content of 3 to 5% on the label. If you want to reach the doses used in clinical trials, 2 to 4 grams of curcumin daily, a phytosome or nanocurcumin supplement formulation is worth investigating, as these solve the bioavailability problem through encapsulation rather than requiring piperine. And perhaps most importantly, your microbiome adapts to patterns, not occasional events. A daily dose of half a teaspoon, taken consistently with pepper and fat for 30 days, produces more measurable microbial change than a large dose taken sporadically. The gut responds to repetition. While this information is relevant for nearly everyone, there are specific groups for whom this conversation is urgent. If you've taken antibiotics multiple times in the past few years, your gut microbiome has been significantly disrupted. The diversity of protective bacteria has been reduced, and the window for opportunistic harmful bacteria to colonize is wide open. Curcumin's prebiotic effect on lactobacillus and bifidobacterium is especially important in your case. If you have a family history of colorectal cancer or have had polyps removed, the anti-angiogenic and apoptotic mechanisms of curcumin are directly relevant to your risk management. Discuss this research with your gastroenterologist. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, or ulcerative colitis, the chronic mucosal inflammation you're managing significantly elevates colorectal cancer risk over time. The NF-kappa B suppression and barrier protective effects of curcumin have been specifically studied in IBD models with promising results. If you are on blood-thinning medications, consult your physician before reaching therapeutic curcumin doses, as curcumin has mild antiplatelet activity at high concentrations. Let me leave you with something concrete and actionable, because I want you to walk away from this with a plan, not just information. What the research has established is this: colon cancer is not a sudden event. It's a decade-long process that begins with a shift in gut bacteria, progresses through chronic inflammation, and eventually creates the cellular environment in which cancer initiates and grows. Curcumin interrupts that process at 3 separate points: the bacterial environment, the cell's antioxidant defenses, and the tumor's ability to recruit blood vessels and avoid self-destruction. For the next 30 days, the intervention is specific. 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of quality turmeric powder, spread across 3 or 4 daily meals, always combined with freshly cracked black pepper and a fat source. Morning golden milk with oat milk and olive oil. Eggs with turmeric and pepper at breakfast. Turmeric dressing or broth at lunch. Roasted vegetables or seasoned protein at dinner. An optional second small golden milk in the evening. By day 14, microbiome research suggests measurable shifts are already underway in bacterial population composition. By day 30, multiple independent studies show statistically significant reductions in inflammatory pathogen levels. This is not about subjective wellness. It's not about how you feel on a given morning. It's about what is happening at the microbial and cellular level inside your colon, changes that unfold below the threshold of sensation, but above the threshold of measurement. Your body's internal environment is not static. It is reshaped continuously by what you eat. The people who come through my practice who have maintained genuinely healthy guts into their 60s and 70s aren't doing anything extraordinary. They are doing ordinary things like this consistently over long periods of time. If this video changed how you're thinking about gut health and cancer prevention, I need you to do 2 things right now. First, share this video with someone you care about. Colon cancer is the 2nd leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and the majority of cases are preventable. The information in this video needs to reach more people. Second, check out my previous video where I break down the other bacteria in your gut that control your immune system's ability to detect and destroy cancer cells before they ever become tumors. The connection will surprise you. I'll see you in the next one. Dr. Leana out.